Discover the one surprising hygiene habit that transformed life for 85% of older women. Revealed. Grace stood by the window, rain drenching the world outside, each drop echoing the solitude that had settled like dust in her small, Midwestern home. She felt like a ghost, haunting the promises of the life she once shared with Tom. Every creak of the old floorboards whispered memories of laughter and warmth, but today the air was thick with reminders of her isolation. As she watched the neighborhood kids splashing in puddles, joy radiated from their carefree laughter, while she felt trapped in an aching past, a mere spectator to life swarming around her. Her heart ached, heavied by the whispers of loneliness. The routine was overpowering, suffocating. It kept pushing her toward the unthinkable notion of reconnecting with herself. But how? The thought of being seen again felt like a distant fantasy. The community fair down at the park was buzzing as she shuffled through the door, yet the threshold felt like a dark abyss. She knew she should forget the ache, but the fear of being judged as too old to change mired her spirit. Suddenly, snippets of conversation ignited her curiosity. A vibrant group of women nearby animatedly discussed a revival of beauty through an unexpected hygiene habit, natural hair care combined with self-love. Grace listened, fighting the skepticism that pooled in her stomach, a comment here or a laugh there pricking her heart with hope. Could something so simple, a new routine, indeed reconnect her to the girl she once was? She lingered for a moment, feeling a spark of determination to want something more for herself, but shadowed by lingering doubts. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Grace's determination clashed with a storm of emotions as she headed to the farmer's market the following week. Pushed forward by a desire to reclaim aspects of herself that she feared had slipped away forever, each day began with her slowly massaging the concoction into her hair, each scoop of natural ingredients drawing forth fragments of courage. As her appearance began to rejuvenate, the internal conversation shifted. She felt a desire to connect, to engage with the women whose laughter had once echoed around her, hesitant but drawn like a moth to flame. They shared stories and scars, laughter and heartache, weaving a tapestry of resilience. Yet just as she began to find her footing, walking towards a sense of belonging, the universe threw her a curveball. Jenna, estranged and tense, appeared in her living room as though the storm had summoned her. The tension between them crackled, anxiety wrote itself across Grace's features, and old wounds festered beneath layers of buried anger and unthought-out apologies. "Why now, Mom?" Jenna's voice was sharp, piercing through the fragile threads Grace had worked so hard to stitch together. "What is this sudden need to reinvent yourself?" The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud, demanding grievances be aired, yet revealing the haunting fear of losing her daughter all over again. Grace felt the weight of conflicted emotions, the unsettling pull of childhood expectations against her desperate claim to joy. Each breath became laborious, muscled tension eclipsing resolve. Could she dare to assert her right to reclaim joy, knowing the risk would fracture the delicate shell of their relationship? As Jenna's fierce eyes demanded acknowledgement, Grace stood, not just on the precipice of confrontation, but potentially on the edge of losing everything. Could she balance her yearning for self-discovery with the pursuit of reconciliation? The moments hung thick with unresolved tension, heavy with questions. Could she embrace her worth amidst chaos, or was the venture toward transformation too dangerous a gamble? Grace's heart quickened, and with that single beat, she felt a surge of vulnerability envelop her like a thick fog. Slowly, she traced the contours of her feelings, every unspoken thought cocooned within her. The image of her daughter, a young woman looking back with a blend of concern and anger, made her question the choices she'd made, both as a mother and a woman. What was she so afraid of? She pondered. Was it truly about her rediscovery, or did it reach deeper into Jenna's own insecurities? Determined not to crumble beneath Jenna's gaze, Grace took a breath, infusing her voice with a new steadiness. I'm not just reinventing myself, Jenna. I'm trying to remember who I was before everything changed. Each word tumbled out cautiously, an alchemy of honesty and fear, slowly dissipating the tension that hummed between them. You don't understand how lost I've felt. Jenna's expression softened, a quiet flicker of understanding breaking through her armor. But why didn't you talk to me sooner? It's like you're doing this all alone. The question, raw and straight, bore into Grace's heart. The truth was, she hadn't wanted to burden Jenna. Yet here was an opportunity, their connection, frayed as it was, starting to knit itself together. I thought I was just a shadow in your life, Grace admitted, a tremor in her voice that signaled a willingness to sift through years of misunderstandings. I didn't want to drag you back into my darkness. Jenna stepped closer, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, their eyes locked. In that space, something shifted. Grace could feel the air change as guilt wrestled with hope. As they stood on that thin precipice of shared truths, Grace realized being vulnerable wasn't just about her journey. It was also about extending her hand to Jenna. Maybe we can both find our way back to ourselves, she suggested, her heart pounding. We don't have to do this alone. If you're willing, I want to share this process with you. The offer, resonating with the promise of healing, hung heavy in the air. A flicker of hesitation crossed Jenna's face. And what if our paths are too different now? What if you change and I don't? The deep-rooted fear of an evolving relationship loomed large, yet it simultaneously unveiled her willingness to engage. Grace thought of the laughter she had yearned to regain, the vitality that had slipped through her fingers. Then we'll face that together, she replied, words both a vow and an invitation. She felt her own excitement pierce through the layers of doubt, kindling a hope that began to spark. Jenna glanced away for a moment, wrestling with her internal battle. You really want to do this? She asked, her voice now wavering with uncertainty. I have to, Grace replied, breathing in deeply, releasing the remnants of fear that clung tightly around her heart. If not for me, then for you. For us. The silence between them was charged with anticipation, potential brimming beneath the surface. In that pregnant pause, Grace resolved to fully embrace the journey ahead. She had tasted a flicker of warmth, and with it, she felt a reinvention was possible, not just in the external habits she was adopting, but in the way she engaged with her loved ones. With every step toward beauty, she would initiate a dialogue, not just with herself, but with those around her. Yet, as she stunned herself with a new resolve, she couldn't shake the feeling that confronting Jenna was only the beginning. Already her mind swirled with thoughts about what lay ahead. The changes she would need to face together with her daughter were just the tip of the iceberg. What else would emerge in the pursuit of joy? What buried resentment remained, waiting to be unearthed? One question lingered in the back of her mind. Would this rebirth redefine everything she once knew, or would it fracture, shatter her sense of family? As Grace met Jenna's challenging gaze, part of her held her breath, ready to dive headfirst into the unknown. What awaited was not merely a personal venture, but a reckoning that would test the very fabric of their relationship. The storm of transformation was brewing, and she could feel the first drops begin to fall. Grace stood frozen, the tumult of emotions swirling in the air around them. This moment, rich with potential, marked a pivotal point in her journey. She felt Jenna's doubt lingering like an unwelcome shadow, yet intertwined with that doubt was the flicker of possibility. They were at a crossroads. The path ahead could either lead to an enriched relationship or plunge them deeper into uncertainty. What if I can't find my way back? Jenna's voice broke the silence, tinged with the vulnerability of a young woman who had tasted both independence and insecurity. Grace's heart clenched, the weight of Jenna's fear pressing down on her. Yet, instead of retreating into her own doubt, Grace stepped deeper into that shared space, embracing the discomfort. "Maybe we won't find it," she acknowledged, her voice resonating with sincerity. "But what if we discover parts of ourselves we never knew existed?" Jenna's eyes narrowed, skepticism battling with curiosity. "You really believe that? That we can just change like that?" "I do," Grace insisted, her newfound confidence fueling her words. "Change isn't instantaneous. It's a journey. Together, we can explore it. Start small, like having coffee together and talking about things that matter to us. No more shadows between us, just light and honesty." A hesitant smile crept onto Jenna's face, the corners of her mouth lifting ever so slightly as she considered the suggestion. Grace felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps they were on the fringe of something transformative. Seeing that flicker ignited a mental leap within Grace. What else could she change? What parts of herself were still hidden away, just like the relationship with her daughter? It dawned on her. Embracing this journey meant not just grappling with family dynamics, but also redefining personal standards. She had let years slip by, falling into routines that stifled her spirit. Those routines needed disrupting. And the first step might just begin with her own self-care practices, both physical and emotional. "What do you think about finding a hobby together?" Grace suggested, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "Or even a class, like painting or yoga, something to nurture creativity and connection?" Jenna cocked her head slightly, interest piqued. "Yeah, I could see that, but it's going to take time, Grace. I'm not sure we can have such a deep connection right away." "A spark of change can start small," Grace replied, her resolve bolstered. "Every little effort counts. It's about being willing to explore." That moment showcased one of her newfound competencies, her ability to initiate dialogues filled with tangible steps toward growth. For years, she had buried those aspirations beneath a facade of responsibility. Stepping into this new chapter demanded courage, but with it, Grace began to realize she possessed the keys to unlock transformative changes, not just in herself, but also in Jenna. Yet, as time pressed forward, a nagging thought persisted. The uncertainty of what lay ahead, not just in their relationship, but in Grace's own self-discovery, loomed large. What hidden aspirations would surface? Would embracing vulnerability challenge her even further? The next day, Grace set her mind to empowering herself through small, everyday actions. These daily rituals of self-care came with questions that challenged her comfort zones. Would yoga lead her back to strength she had lost? Could a painting class unlock creativity long suppressed? As she scrolled through local classes online, a thought pierced through the excitement. Each choice was more than an activity. It was a step towards reclaiming her identity. When she finally settled on a few classes, the thrill of anticipation pricked at her heel. Unbeknownst to Jenna, her daughter would soon join her in these ventures, unwittingly facing the challenges that lay ahead together. It was the beginning of unraveling the layers of their relationship, one class at a time. Yet as Grace prepared to tell Jenna of her plans over dinner, another question crept into her thoughts. What if the deeper issues within their family dynamics were waiting in the shadows, ready to surface at the most unexpected moment? That thought left her chilled, but the promise of progress kept her moving forward. This was just the beginning, the first brushstrokes of a larger canvas, and the journey was about to take a turn that neither she nor Jenna could have anticipated. As Grace navigated the bustling cafe in their neighborhood, her mind buzzed with anticipation and raw emotions. Today was pivotal, not just in providing an opportunity for her and Jenna to connect over coffee, but in establishing a foundation for their newfound journey together. She could still recall Jenna's tentative agreement about exploring new hobbies. Perhaps her daughter was beginning to see that change was possible after all. Sitting across from Jenna, Grace felt a swell of pride as she noticed the subtle transformation in her daughter's demeanor. Jenna fiddled with her cup, her eyes flickering between interest and wariness. Grace took a deep breath, recalling how far they had come. The challenge now was to keep that momentum alive. "How about we talk about our classes?" Grace suggested, hoping to gauge Jenna's feelings. She leaned forward slightly, inviting engagement without overwhelming her daughter. "I think art sounds fun. It could be a way to express ourselves without the pressure of words." Jenna raised an eyebrow, skepticism wrapping around her thoughts like a tightly knit sweater. "Are you sure about art? What if I'm not good at it? Shouldn't we stick to something easier?" That question struck Grace hard. It mirrored her own insecurities that had paralyzed her in the past. But rather than deflecting or arguing, she leaned into her feelings with clarity. "You know, Jenna, it doesn't have to be about being good. It's about discovering what we can create together, exploring what we enjoy. When did it become about perfection?" A long silence hung in the air, thick with the weight of expectation. Grace could see Jenna wrestling with the challenge of embracing imperfection. It was a reflection of the barrier that had always existed in their relationship, the struggle between safety and vulnerability. "I guess I've always been afraid of failing," Jenna admitted. Her eyes met Grace's, revealing a tenderness that felt unexpected, yet welcome. "What if I try this and just suck at it?" "Then we laugh about it," Grace responded, a small smile breaking through her apprehension. "We'll learn together, and if we're terrible, we'll just make the ugliest paintings and have a good time doing it." Jenna chuckled, the tension in her shoulders easing a fraction. "You think you can handle that?" Grace couldn't suppress her own laughter. "I'm in it for the experience, not a gallery exhibition." Those laughs felt like a balm, momentarily soothing the wounds of silence that had accumulated over years. This wasn't just about the painting class. It was about reimagining their relationship, defining what it meant to be a mother and daughter in this new light of exploration and honesty. After repeated exploration of hobbies, Jenna began opening up about her fear of the future. College decisions loomed large, weighing on her shoulders. Grace felt a pang in her heart, knowing that the pressure she felt as a mother to guide Jenna had become suffocating instead of supportive. They needed to redefine failure and success together. "Jenna," Grace said tentatively, "what if we made a list of everything you want to try without worrying about what others think? Not just classes, but hobbies, careers, or anything that interests you." Jenna's expression changed. Her brow furrowed as she pondered the idea. "That could be fun. But what if it just ends up being stuff I'll never get to do?" "There's the beauty in it. Some might inspire you, and others might fade away, but they each represent parts of you that are worth exploring. Let's promise to keep each other motivated. We won't let disappointment be the end of the road." As Grace shared these thoughts, her internal resolve solidified. Talking to Jenna about dreams was an act of courage, sparking a shift not just in their relationship, but also within herself. With each word, she emboldened her own self-worth, understanding that they were bound to fail, but they were also inevitably bound to grow. But just as hope built up in her chest, a new, unsettling thought surfaced. What if exploring these fears led to darker secrets surfacing that neither of them was prepared to face? For Grace, this was not merely a personal journey of rediscovery. It was an impending confrontation with the shadows that lurked in their history. As the waitress approached, Grace suddenly sensed that every new class she engaged in would peel back layers she had spent years burying. The moment felt electrified with unspoken truths, and as they prepared to leave, a fragment of doubt whispered through her mind. Would the past ultimately define their journey, or could this be the turning point towards a brighter connection? As they walked back, light-hearted banter wrapped around them, but the echo of unresolved issues loomed larger than ever. It felt like the calm before a storm, and Grace took a mental note. Nothing was ever simple when dealing with family. It always held deeper implications waiting to unravel. In initiating this grand experiment of exploration with Jenna, Grace wondered if the real revelation was still waiting just beyond their delicate thresholds of comfort. What awaited them on that horizon? Grace hardly slept that night. The reflections of the cafe conversation looped in her mind like a relentless current. She had stepped into the unknown, both for her and Jenna, and the significance of that step weighed heavy on her. What if she had stirred up something better left undisturbed? The idea of exploring interests together was thrilling, yet it sounded deceptively simple. Morning brought with it a strange clarity mixed with residual anxiety. Grace brewed her coffee in a fuzzy haze, her hands automatic, as she recalled Jenna's expression, a blend of excitement and apprehension when they discussed their hobbies. Their pact felt like a fragile filament, ready to snap under scrutiny. With firm resolve, Grace opened her laptop and began searching for local art classes. Each click felt like a small declaration of commitment. When Jenna stumbled into the kitchen later, her hair tousled and her eyes squinting toward the light, Grace felt a surge of affection. "Hey, sleepyhead," she teased gently. "I found some classes for us." Jenna rubbed her eyes as she neared the table. "You really mean it?" "Absolutely," Grace replied, her heart fluttering with hope. "I think it could be a great way to explore those fears we talked about." Jenna paused, a flicker of vulnerability darting across her face. "You're not worried we'll be terrible?" "Not at all. I just want us to try, to see what happens." Grace took a steadying breath. Jenna's hesitant smile was more than enough to buoy her spirits, reminding Grace that this journey wasn't just Jenna's, it was a new chapter for them both to embrace. The classes started the following week, with a mix of abstract painting and basic drawing. Grace felt invigorated by the chaos of color and creativity. Clumsy strokes on the canvas transformed into something far more meaningful than mere paint. It was liberation. Every class revealed layers of emotion she hadn't anticipated confronting. As she dabbed brush after brush, she rediscovered joy, the feeling rushing back like an old friend with a brand new story. Yet, the sessions formed an unanticipated mirror, reflecting insecurities and truths she'd tucked away. Each time Jenna created something unique, the pride starkly pieced apart Grace's own scars of self-doubt. Witnessing her daughter's growth pushed Grace to confront shadows lurking within her, a realization that caused tightness in her chest. One particular Saturday, amid laughter and messy paint across tables, Grace felt a peculiar weight stuck on her tongue. After a session of painting sunsets, she sensed Jenna wrestling with something beyond just the fear of failure, a broader anxiety. So, naturally, Grace tried to create a safe space for her daughter. "Hey, I get that blank canvas can feel overwhelming," she began, hoping to coax out what bubbled beneath those painted layers. "It's like life. Sometimes we don't even know what to create next." Jenna hesitated, then spoke softly. "What if I get to college and can't keep up? Everyone else seems more prepared." The very mention of college sent shivers through Grace. Her heart raced. "You're human, Jenna. It's okay to feel unprepared. We all do, even if we pretend otherwise. But it's just, there's so much pressure to be perfect. Pressure to be perfect." The words resonated painfully between them, expertly displacing Grace's own fears of failure as a mother. She had spent years buried in societal expectations, molding her life around the ideal she could never quite reach. Perhaps Jenna's struggle was simply a reflection of Grace's own, echoing through generations. "I know," Grace broke the silence with conviction. "But here's the deal. We should aim for progress, not perfection. Would you be open to talking more about this, about our fears?" That question hung suspended in the air, layered with unspoken weight, and Jenna nodded, her eyes widening. Just before Grace could delve deeper, the doorway opened. A familiar but unexpected face appeared. Her sister Lily stood there, exuding an energy that instantly shifted the atmosphere. The mixture of surprise and dread flooded Grace with instant memories, the unresolved conflicts from years past. "Sorry to drop by unannounced," Lily began, but the familiar tension that accompanied her presence was unmistakable. Grace felt a knot in her chest tighten. She was walking straight into the storm she'd tried to avoid with Jenna. What followed next would require confrontations Grace wasn't sure she was ready to face, not just for herself, but for Jenna too. Would this be yet another layer pulled back on their intertwined pasts, or could it lead to the clarity they desperately sought? As Grace looked at her sister, the weight of booming silence echoed around her. Battles of the past were about to resurface, testing the very foundations she sought to rebuild with Jenna. And in the dawning light, she braced for the unexpected revelations that lurked just beneath the surface. The door had opened. What would it unleash? The glint in Lily's eyes cut through Grace's resolve, slicing it into delicate shards. This wasn't just about Jenna, climbing walls of self-doubt painted in fear. This was a myriad of tangled histories, conversations left unspoken, and unresolved conflicts that had rippled through their family. Grace had hoped to create a sanctuary for growth with her daughter, but the arrival of her sister felt like an earthquake shaking the foundations. "Can we talk?" Lily asked, stepping forward, her voice confident yet edged with uncertainty. Grace froze, her mind racing through fragmented memories. Whispers of old arguments, laughter turned sour, the sharp sting of betrayal. The past felt like a compulsion, tugging at the threads of her present, threatening to undo everything she was attempting with Jenna. Yet here they were, sister to sister, poised on the edge of something profound. "Sure," Grace replied, her voice steadier than she felt. A glance at Jenna showed her daughter absorbed in the moment, paintbrush in hand, unaware of the tension brewing between them. But Jenna had a way of sensing when something vital shifted. The subtle tension would not escape her notice for long. Lily clasped her hands, as if bracing for impact. "I wasn't sure how you'd feel, but I wanted to reach out. It's been too long, and I feel—" Her voice faltered, but then she quickly caught her breath. "I feel like we've let misunderstandings fester. I can't continue like this." Grace wanted to respond, to promise that she heard her sister's plea, but the knot in her chest tightened. Would they be able to have an honest conversation, or would old habits surface, filled with blame and guarded accusations? "Can I just say something first?" Grace interrupted before the silence loomed too long. "This past year has been a whirlwind of self-discovery for me. I'm starting to embrace the idea of vulnerability." It felt strange to articulate that idea aloud, particularly to Lily, who had long expected solid barriers rather than cracks exposing uncertainty. "Vulnerability? It sounds cliché, doesn't it?" Lily replied, narrowing her eyes, scanning Grace's face. "But I think I understand what you're saying." The layers of tension wove through their words like a complicated tapestry. Grace felt herself weighing the potential outcomes of their discussion. Would they tear down the walls together, or would they build new ones higher and thicker? She pondered what exactly her sister needed. "Why now?" she questioned gently. "I can't carry the old grievances any longer," Lily confessed, her voice breaking slightly. "I made mistakes, and so did you. I just want to figure this out together before it's too late." Wasn't her own relationship with Jenna rooted in similar promises of honesty, forgiveness, and understanding? Each class, each brushstroke had taught Grace that growth could be messy and profound. Perhaps this moment mirrored that journey. "All right," Grace nodded, taking a step closer, infused with tentative hope. "Let's talk about the past and the expectations we put on ourselves. I'm willing to work through this if you are, but let's be real. I can't guarantee comfort here." "Neither can I," Lily murmured, her voice laced with the shadows of unspoken regrets. "But I want to try." As they cautiously navigated their strained history, it was clear this would not be a swift journey. Old wounds sliced deep, threatening to distract them from their main goal, healing and connection. However, Grace felt propelled by the lessons she'd begun to learn in her art classes, where every misstep led her to exciting transformations on the canvas. Amidst this bonding effort, she realized something critical. Acceptance was not a destination, but an ongoing process. The ability to remain present amid discomfort could become the very bridge that brought a resolution to their fractured relationship. But as they exchanged truths, ripe with vulnerability, Jenna snuck glances at them, her expression reflecting a blend of concern and curiosity. Would Grace and Lily's dance of brokenness offer Jenna an insight into the conflicts ahead, or would it add weight to her own burdens? The distance between Grace and her sister felt not merely physical, but ingrained in the fabric of their identity. In an instant, she worried about the ripple effects of this conversation, impacting Jenna in unforeseen ways. Could they bridge the gaps without drowning in the depths of their own grievances? In the shadows of their reconnection loomed an undeniable question. Could they rewrite the narrative together? The walls were trembling. Transformation danced on the horizon. But would the revelation strengthen their bonds or unravel everything Grace hoped to build with Jenna? A shiver ran down her spine as she realized they had just begun to confront the layers of family that had long been buried, and the stakes felt higher than ever. Grace felt the weight of the moment pressing down, as if unearthing long-buried skeletons from the past would somehow reanimate old pains. Yet standing before Lily, something began to shift within her. The act of confronting their shared history felt less like potential destruction and more like the foundation of something new, something needed. Her resolve solidified, brushing away remnants of doubt that had lingered too long. "Okay, let's start with what truly hurt us," Grace proposed, her voice adopting a steadiness she hadn't known she possessed. "What did you feel when everything fell apart?" The question hung in the air, thick and heavy, leading them toward a territory fraught with uncertainty, yet ripe for healing. Lily's breath hitched momentarily, and Grace took note of the fleeting vulnerability. "I felt abandoned. You moved on with your life, and I was left behind. It was as if you chose everyone else over us." The accusation, raw and unfiltered, struck a nerve. Grace barely contained the surge of defensiveness that arose within her. "I never chose, Lily. It was survival," she rebutted, her words tinged with the sharp edge of resentment. "I thought I was making the right decisions, for myself and for Jenna. Didn't you feel I had to be selfish at times to ensure our survival?" Lily shook her head, her expression a mixture of empathy and frustration. "And you still could have reached out. We all needed to heal, but you kept me in the dark. I thought we were a team." An unexpected sense of clarity washed over Grace as she listened. This was not merely about the past. It was a reflection of her own journey of self-discovery. She was learning that the very act of vulnerability was not limited to herself. It was also allowing others to share in their hurt. "I see how my actions hurt you," she confessed, her heart pounding as she surrendered a piece of her defensiveness. "The idea of reaching out felt overwhelming, but I want you to know that I never meant for you to feel abandoned. I struggled too." The admission lingered, allowing the air to fill with potential understanding rather than bitterness. Lily's eyes softened, mirroring a growing insight. "I guess I thought you were stronger than me, that you thrived under pressure. I wished I could have been there to support you, but I didn't know how. All I saw was you succeeding while I floundered." Hearing those words cracked something within Grace, illuminating the dichotomy they had etched between themselves. It became evident that they were both trapped in their individual feelings of inadequacy, perpetuating a cycle of silence and misunderstanding. Their conversation meandered on, each revelation dissolving the illusions they had carried for so long. Grace felt herself loosening the iron grip of the past, realizing that their connection, however fraught, could serve as a lifeline threaded through years of discord. As they opened up about various memories, moments of laughter, shades of love, and clouds of regret, the unspoken barriers between them began to dissolve. Grace recalled her fiery passion for art and how each brushstroke on a canvas mirrored the layers of her emotions, complicated yet cathartic. She imagined the possibility of recreating the same artful connection with Lily, careful to color their dialogue with empathy. Yet, Amidst understanding, an unsettling thought interrupted her introspection. What if familiar wounds resurfaced before they could fully heal? What if the truth in this moment unraveled too quickly, spiraling into accusations? Jenna's tentative glances haunted her thoughts. What would her daughter learn from this shared vulnerability? Grace struggled to shake the anxiety gripping her heart. Would they emerge stronger, or would unresolved feelings break them again? The question sat between them like an unfinished painting. While Grace envisioned a renewed bond, shadows of uncertainty loomed. The distance left between honesty and bitterness still felt vast. Through the majestic strokes of forgiveness and understanding, an inevitable challenge remained: how to bridge the gap of pain that had separated them for so long while keeping Jenna safe from the fallout. With the conversation wearing on, Grace realized that the past could shape her future only if she allowed it to guide her hand, not bind it. Together, could they paint a new narrative? And just as hope flickered, a moment of eerie silence enveloped them, leaving Grace aware of the monumental task ahead. This was not just about uncovering truths. It was about forging a unified path toward healing. What would be the consequences when each of them began to confront the ugliness they had left festering for too long? Could they withstand the aftershocks of their revelations, or would the rifts open wide once more? The truth waited just beyond their reach, and Grace's heart raced with the urgency of what lay ahead. The silence stretched between Grace and Lily, heavy and foreboding, as each contemplated the implications of their unearthing past. Grace's gaze drifted to the cluttered room around them, filled with remnants of their friendship, a series of photographs, mismatched mementos, and hastily scribbled notes exchanged in better times. Each object told a story, a silent testament to what had been lost and what could possibly be regained. "Do you think it's too late for us?" Lily's voice broke the stillness, laced with a fragility that struck Grace deeply. It was a question loaded with despair, echoing doubts that had lingered within her heart. Grace paused, gathering her thoughts. "I don't believe it is," she responded, her voice steadying as she wrestled with the reality of their situation. "But it will take work. We can't go back and pretend the past didn't happen. We need to address it all, to stand in the ugly parts with honesty. That's the only way we can rebuild." Lily nodded, but Grace noticed the flicker of fear in her eyes. It was the fear of unearthing more than they were ready to handle. The lingering wounds from their shared history were daunting, but Grace understood that confronting them was their only path to clarity. "What if we don't know how to fix this?" Lily questioned, her tone a mixture of hope and resignation. "Then we figure it out," Grace replied, testing the strength of her own conviction. A familiar yearning surged within, the urge to be the problem solver, the mediator. However, she recognized this was not her journey alone. They were in this together. In that moment, a small flame of determination ignited within her. Grace realized it was time to embrace her identity, not as a mere survivor, but as an active participant in her own life. Stepping away from the shadows of the past wasn't just a choice. It was an empowering transformation. The same fervor she once channeled into art could now be directed toward rebuilding these precious relationships. "Let's create a plan," she suggested, her energy rekindling with each word. "Let's address things one by one. We'll meet regularly, just the two of us, and talk through the layers of our past, lay everything out where we can see it. It's messy, but we have to get into the muck." Lily's hesitant smile was a subtle nod to how this idea flickered with potential. "Yes, I'd like that. But what if we face things that shake us up?" Grace inhaled deeply, contemplating the gravity of what lay ahead. "Then we lean on each other. If we can support one another through the worst, that shows we're serious about healing. I want Jenna to see that we can confront our pain and still emerge okay. I want her to know it's okay to ask for help." The thought of Jenna pushed a surge of clarity into Grace's mind. An image of her daughter filled her thoughts. the way her eyes lit up with joy over little things, oblivious to the fractures in Grace's own world. It was time to craft a legacy of resilience rather than avoidance. If she could find a way to navigate her own darkness and face it head-on, perhaps that was the greatest lesson she could impart. A new layer of trust began to form between them, and Grace could feel it, the promise that, while the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, they were finally moving forward together. Each conversation would be a brushstroke in the restoration of their connection, and Grace was resolved to let that process unfold. Yet, as she considered the prospect of tackling their shared history, another unsettling thought crept in. What truths might surface that could shake the very foundation of their renewed commitment to each other? Were they truly prepared for the revelations the past could unleash? With apprehension tinged with hope, Grace sensed that the journey ahead would require not just vulnerability, but courage, a courage that would test not only their bond, but also the very fabric of who they had become. The moments that lay ahead were both a promise and a peril, and Grace's heart pounded with the weight of it all. But before she could dwell further, she noticed a photograph peeking out from beneath a pile of books. It was an image from their youth, a time of pure, unfiltered joy. The sight ignited a longing within her, an urge to resurrect that essence in their current dynamic. "What's that?" Lily asked, breaking Grace out of her reverie, her curiosity piqued by the sudden shift in her expression. Grace reached for the photograph, their past preserved in a single moment. "This," she said softly, "is where we start." But as she held it up for both of them to see, an unsettling sense of foreboding lingered in the air. Would the old innocence they craved still exist, or had the years forever changed their story? Grace sat upright, the photograph cradled in her hands, the faces of young women laughing with abandon frozen in time. The joy radiating from the image felt like a distant echo, a stark contrast to the weight pressing down on her shoulders now. She looked deeply into Lily's eyes, searching for affirmation that they could find their way back to something resembling that happiness. "Remember this day?" Grace asked, her voice a whisper thick with nostalgia. "Of course," Lily replied, a little smile creeping onto her lips. "We thought we could take on the world. It was just us, and nothing else mattered." That feeling of invincibility they once had seemed like an unreachable ideal now, buried under complexities and misunderstandings. The laughter they had shared now seemed painfully fragile. Was it still within their grasp? "Let's try to retrieve that feeling," Grace suggested, her resolve transforming into a tangible plan. "Let's schedule our conversations like dates. We can begin each session with one positive memory from our past. If we build from those moments, maybe we can navigate toward the harder truths." Lily's expression shifted, an acknowledgement of the challenge, but also a flicker of enthusiasm. "I like that. Maybe it'll help ease us into the more difficult discussions." Yet, in that clarity, doubt lingered. Grace couldn't shake the feeling that their past was not merely an innocent chapter of laughter and light, but also lined with shadows that could distort their present. Would revealing those darker elements drive a wedge between them again? "As we begin, I need to be honest," Grace started, her heart racing at the vulnerability she was about to express. "I've carried a lot of anger and resentment, mainly towards myself. There are things I regret, decisions that have left me feeling lost. I don't want them to hamper our progress." Lily's face softened. "I carry my own regrets too, Grace," she admitted, a tremor in her voice. "I've made choices that affected us both, choices that took me away from you. I felt so alone during those times." Both women were teetering on the edge of a chasm filled with unresolved emotions. They stood with their feet planted in separate territories, one in guilt, the other in resentment. But together, they faced the daunting task of bridging that gap. "Maybe we should set some ground rules," Grace proposed, thinking strategically. "Let's agree to listen without judgment. If things get difficult, we pause, and no anger, at least while we're rebuilding." A mutual understanding blossomed between them, a silent promise that this journey wouldn't be solely about unearthing pain, but would also center upon understanding. Grace could see the same flicker of determination mirrored in Lily's demeanor, their cooperative effort potentially transforming into a resolute pact. The photograph slipped through Grace's fingers, resting atop her knee. "We'll meet on Sundays. If things begin to unravel, we'll re-establish our connection with what ignited our friendship." "Agreed," Lily said, her expression resolute. With each agreed term, the bond between them felt stronger, a promise to confront the past together. However, as Grace contemplated the complexities that lay ahead, another part of her mind wandered. Would the process of sharing their regrets and misgivings result in genuine healing, or would it expose hidden wounds that had festered too long? As they discussed the logistics of their plan, Grace was struck by a pressing thought, an intrigue flitting at the corners of her mind. What if their upcoming meetings led to revelations not just about shared pain, but also about each other's strengths? The flicker of excitement carried an undercurrent of anxiety. Grace intuitively understood that self-discovery was a double-edged sword. Every truth they revealed could uncover new dynamics, both positive and dangerous. Just as she voiced her enthusiasm for unraveling their complexities together, Lily's phone buzzed, breaking their momentary reverie. "It's Jenna," Lily commented, glancing at the screen. "I told her I'm meeting you today." "Good," Grace said, masking her nervousness. Sharing her renewed commitment to healing with Jenna was critical. We both need to show her that our journeys matter, especially at this stage of life. With the conversation drawing to a close, Grace felt a surge of both fear and determination. They were on the edge of a significant transformation, but could the depths of their confrontations lead to the rebuilding of their identities? What would Jenna see in their process? How much of their respective pasts would they be able to traverse without losing themselves to old patterns? The apprehension in her chest grew heavier as Grace leaned back in her chair. Their journey was just beginning, and the path toward both healing and revelation was riddled with the uncertainty of what they might uncover within themselves. She couldn't shake a newfound anxiety. Were they truly ready to face it all, to uncover the beauty and darkness wrapped together in their stories? The moment felt electrifying, pregnant with both possibilities and perils, as Grace prepared for the uncharted territory of their next conversation. With Lily's phone buzzing in the backdrop, Grace stared at the photograph, the echoes of their laughter morphing into tangible resolve. They were on the verge of something profound. Whether it solidified their bond or unraveled it entirely hung in the balance of every conversation they would share moving forward. Their pact felt precarious, yet strangely exhilarating. Later that evening, Jenna entered the room with a radiant smile, lightening the tension that had accumulated all day. "Hey, how was your meeting?" she asked curiously. Grace noticed the gentle warmth in her daughter's voice, a stark contrast to the heaviness still lingering in her heart. Grace exchanged a glance with Lily, who momentarily froze before answering. "We talked about some things, Jenna. Important things that I wish I'd done long ago. I hope you'll understand that honesty can be a bit messy, but it's worthwhile." "Really?" Jenna's interest was piqued. "Is this about family stuff? Like the stuff you never talk about?" Grace felt the weight of her daughter's inquiry settle heavily between them. "Yes, but it's also about moving forward. We want you to know that you're part of this journey too. Our family dynamics have to evolve if we're to truly connect together." "What if you all figure things out without me?" Jenna frowned, her voice laced with insecurity. "No one is going anywhere without you, Jenna," Grace reassured her, a surge of determination igniting inside. "We're inviting you into this new way of connecting, together, as a family. We've been caught up in a storm for too long. Healing encourages growth, often in unexpected ways." Jenna's eyes flicked between Grace and Lily, gauging their sincerity. "Okay, as long as it doesn't get too awkward. You both have a knack for making things unnecessarily tense." Grace chuckled softly, recognizing her own tendency to steer conversations into convoluted territories. "Well, I plan on changing that dynamic. No more shadows, just honest conversations about fears, hopes, and dreams." "Can you assure me that won't just become a brooding session?" Jenna asked, a hopeful glimmer breaking through her earlier apprehension. "I won't lie. It might feel uncomfortable at times," Grace acknowledged, gathering her strength to add. "But that's part of the process. It's about sharing light as much as it is about confronting dark corners." The room felt lighter as Jenna absorbed this reassurance. An unexpected apprehension washed over Grace as she pondered the specifics of sharing their journey with Jenna. Would revealing their vulnerabilities spawn deeper empathy, or would it overwhelm her? As light conversation flowed, Grace's heart warmed with pride, observing Jenna's growing openness. She caught glimpses of resilience, fragile yet powerful. Perhaps Jenna's development was intertwined with her own. Every thread woven in the family fabric shaped their identities. "Let's make a pact," Jenna said, her voice gaining confidence. "I want in on this journey of rediscovery, my own and yours. But can we promise to keep it light?" "That's the spirit," Lily chimed in, excitement knitting through her own resolve. Grace felt an exhilarating rush. They were ready to explore this together, armed with newfound courage and determination. The next weeks unfolded like the brushstrokes of a vibrant canvas, each layer revealing more color, light, and texture. Grace embraced her self-care ritual with commitment, while Jenna uncovered artistic talents she didn't realize she had. Laughter filled the spaces once occupied by silence. Their connection deepened, strengthened by emotional truths, yet continuously challenged by the shadows of their past. Throughout those evolving weeks, Lily and Grace engaged in their mutual exploration. Their conversations often spiraled into raw honesty, revealing truths that shook their foundations. Yet those very revelations wove the fabric of their existence anew. Each discussion became an opportunity to bravely dive into the complexity of relationships, learning that vulnerability could create bigger, bolder structures of understanding. There were moments where the scars of the past clawed back to the surface, moments where they stumbled over previously buried pains. But through it all, they learned to cradle each other's hearts instead of dwelling in discomfort. Grace found her fears lightened with each shared burden, and Lily's acknowledgement of shared responsibility crafted a bridge toward reconciliation. "Remember that photograph?" Grace asked one day, as they sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, the colors of paint strewn about like expressions of emotion. "I think we need to create a new one that shows how far we've come." "I like that idea," Lily replied, the corners of her mouth lifting. Jenna, ever the sport, jumped in. "Well, I have an idea. Let's go to the park, decorate with flowers, and capture a moment that feels significant. No more posing. Just us being us." Their eagerness sparked like fire in the waning afternoon sun. As they rushed out of the house, Grace took a moment to stop and contemplate the journey, the uncharted territory they had traveled together. She realized she had accomplished something magnificent. She had taken steps away from fear and isolation, embracing the warmth of connection. The sense of release she experienced filled her with satisfaction she hadn't felt in years. The photograph they captured that day became a symbol, an emblem of triumph over the tumultuous bonds of choice, rediscovery, and connection. The echoes of laughter solidified their bond, planting seeds of hope for the future. Gradually, Grace began to see herself not just as a woman who lost her way, but as a warrior, championing her transformation alongside her daughter and sister. They became an inseparable force, inspiring one another to conquer challenges, unravel truths, and navigate the sometimes rocky road ahead. Through peeling away layers and exposing vulnerabilities, she found herself in the mirror, forging stronger connections, equipped with the knowledge that empathy could transform conflict into connection. Grace smiled at the camera, the light capturing its essence. She knew that the journey ahead would undoubtedly be colored by uncertainties anew. Yet it was in owning her story that she discovered the beauty of transformation, not only for herself, but for the family she had reignited. This was the moment she had conquered herself, no longer shackled by the weight of the past. Each breath held the promise of full-bodied presence. She was a mother, a daughter, an artist, all intertwined in their individual endeavors toward healing. With unwavering self-awareness, Grace stepped confidently into life, sinking into the glorious expansion of possibility. Each challenge felt like an exciting invitation, a fresh canvas ready for vibrant strokes, the legacy of a woman not focused solely on survival, but thriving amid that journey. Now, this is the moment for you to act. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories unfolding from personal transformations just like Grace's. Remember to leave a like now, to feed the algorithm, and keep empowering voices like Grace's to advocate for change. Comment your thoughts, reactions, and theories about how you believe the journey of healing unfolds for families. Your voice matters. And please don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. It may just spark the inspiration they didn't know they were looking for.